The Red Eyes by the River. You ever notice how rivers feel different at night? During the day, they're calm, familiar, just water moving along. But when the sun drops, when the shadows spill over the banks, it's like the river becomes something else. Alive, waiting. That's where I was, small town, nothing special, just a guy who liked to fish after work. My name doesn't matter as much as the routine. Same boots, same tackle box, same crumpled pack of cigarettes I told myself I'd quit 10 years ago. Truth is, I wasn't fishing for dinner. I was fishing to forget. My marriage was cracking like old plaster. My bills stacked up higher than the beer cans by the sink, and the only place I felt quiet was down by that river. Some folks go to church, others to the bar. Me, I went to the water. But that night, the quiet wasn't mine to keep. I remember the air first, thick like it had weight. The kind of heavy that makes your skin itch, like the night itself is pressing in. The moon was a sliver, weak and half hidden, barely strong enough to spill silver across the ripples. My line sat in the current, bobbing lazy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was out there with me. Not the usual things, raccoons rustling in the brush, a deer snapping twigs in the dark. This was different, deeper, like the river had opened an eye and noticed me. I lit a cigarette, the flame flaring against the dark, and that's when I thought I saw it. Across the water, just for a breath, a pair of eyes, low to the ground, glowing red, not reflecting but burning, staring straight back at me. And once you've seen something like that, you can't unsee it. I just cast my line when I saw them, two red pinpricks hovering above the current. At first I told myself it was nothing, deer maybe, or raccoon eyes catching the moonlight. My brain wanted logic, reason, because logic kept me steady and steady kept me sane. But then they blinked, sideways, not up and down like a person, sideways like a lizard, and my stomach dropped like I'd swallowed a stone. The shape stepped forward, or maybe it leaned. It was hard to tell where the shadow ended and the thing began. Too tall, too thin, with arms dangling like wet rope. And its mouth, God help me, its mouth stretched wide, wider than any mouth should. A grin pulled too far, silent, showing nothing but dark. My rod jerked, hard. The reel screamed as the line tore out, the kind of pull no catfish in that river could ever make. I held tight, my knuckles bone white until the rod bent like it would snap. Then it did. A sharp crack, the pieces flew from my hands. I staggered back, clutching the useless handle, and that's when I felt it. Something brushed my leg. Not a fish, not the current. Cold, wet, deliberate, sliding around my ankle like a hand trying me on for size. I kicked hard, splashing, stumbling up the bank. The water answered back with a sound. Not a splash, not a ripple, a bubbling, like the river was boiling from underneath, like something was laughing. And the eyes, they sank. They didn't fade, they didn't vanish. They slid down into the black water, leaving the ripples to shiver across the surface. I should have run, should have left everything. My tackle, my cooler, the smoldering cigarette burning itself out in the dirt, and gone straight home. But I didn't, because the sound didn't stop. That bubbling rolled along the river, following me as I edged backwards up the bank. Every step I took, the water followed, as if the whole current had teeth. And here's the worst part. I heard a voice. Not loud, not even clear, just enough. It whispered my name, not from the bank, not from the woods, from the river itself. I had two choices, run or see what had taken hold of my river, and for a second too long, I froze. My chest locked, every muscle turned to stone as the water swelled like a living thing. Then it surfaced, just enough for me to see, not a head, not an animal, something in between. A face half-formed like clay left unfinished, skin gray and slick, eyes glowing red from sockets too deep, and that mouth. God, that mouth stretched wide again. So wide it split the shape of its head in half. This time the grin came with a noise, not out loud, but inside my skull. A whisper, low and thin, curling through the back of my mind. It said my name, clear, intimate, like it had known me longer than my own mother. I stumbled, clawing at the muddy bank, my boots sliding out beneath me. Panic burned through me, animal and blind. But when I glanced back, it wasn't just the thing anymore. The whole river was moving. The surface boiled, roiled, surged as if 100 unseen hands were clawing at it from underneath. Faces pressed against the skin of the water. Some half there, some screaming in silence. All of them red-eyed, all of them watching me. One surged higher than the rest, water streaming down its twisted form, and it spoke without speaking. Come closer. My body wanted to bolt, but something in that whisper tugged. It felt like grief, like rage, like every sleepless night I'd ever had, all twisted into a rope and wrapped around my chest. The river wanted me, and God helped me. A part of me wanted to go. I stepped forward before I even realized it, mud sucking at my boots. The water foamed, eager, the eyes burning hotter. My foot touched the edge, cold spray licking at my toes when something inside me snapped. I shouted, a raw, ugly sound. My body spun, throwing the broken rod handle. I still clutched into the water as hard as I could. It vanished into the chaos. The river answered with a roar, a sound that shook the trees, rattled the ground beneath me, like thunder tearing loose right at my feet. And then it reached. I made it home that night, but not whole. Arms buzzing, legs jelly, like someone had rewired my spine wrong. The clock blinked 3 a.m. The house smelled like river mud and nicotine and panic. She woke when I slammed the door, sat up with that tired, wary look a person gets after years of disappointed alarms. I tried to tell her, I saw something. The words sounded ridiculous even to me. She laughed once, thin and tired. You been drinking? I didn't answer. It was the safest lie I could find. Morning came like an accusation. I went to work with a face the boss didn't recognize. He asked if I was sick. I wasn't. I was hunted. Every sound that day, the cough of the copier, the drip of the plumbing, felt like the river trying out a voice. That evening, I drove past the bend because that's what fear does. It drags you back to the place it stung you. The headlights cut through mist, and there they were again. Not two eyes, not one set, dozens, floating low, bobbing among cattails, dotting the far bank like carnival lanterns soaked in blood. Some watched from the reeds. Some sat in the water's skin like gemstones. They didn't blink. They just waited. I parked, engine ticking like an animal's breath. I called the sheriff because what else do you do? He's a big man, a believer in gravel and paperwork. He came out with a flashlight and a look that said he thought I'd staged something. He scowled, made small talk with the dark, and said there were raccoons, coyotes, maybe a drunk with a headlamp. His flashlight scanned the river and came back with only black and silver. He asked if I wanted to file a report. I almost did. Word got around. People always need a story, and my story was a cheap thrill. The bar jokes, the memes, river eyes, the way towns knit distance into a rumor and wear it like a sweater. My wife stopped looking at me the same way. She listened to me for a sentence, then checked the door, checked the clock, like she expected hands at the knob. The bills still sat in their smug, familiar piles. Some things don't care about monsters, but the eyes didn't care about jokes. They started showing up where they had no right to be, a reflection in a shop window, 2 red dots in the glass of my living room picture frame, my daughter's school photo, the kids blurring in the plastic with a pair of tiny red specks in the background. Every time I blinked, there was a new place for them to hide. I tried to leave town. My car packed like an exile. I drove 50 miles, 60, felt a quiet ease settle that I hadn't known for a long time. Then I glanced in the rearview mirror and thought I saw, no, not saw exactly, felt their attention like a damp palm on the back of my neck. I turned around, pulled a U, and came back to the river. Maybe the worst part isn't that they watch, it's that they remember you. The river keeps a ledger. It doesn't care if your name is small on the town roster or big in your own head. It keeps accounts. That night, I understood the math. You look at the river, it looks back, and the balance shifts. So here I am, hands still shaking, voice low when I tell the neighbors I've seen them. Some believe, some don't. Mostly they cross the street. Mostly they stop answering my texts. My marriage is a careful walk around landmines. My boss thinks I'm unreliable. The bank thinks I'm late. The river thinks I owe it something. And the eyes, they keep tallying. They keep waiting. They grow more certain every day, like a patient creditor that knows you'll come around. I sleep in 2-hour shards now, waking to the taste of copper and the echo of my name. And when the house is fully dark, when the town breathes soft, there's a sound like water counting footsteps on the porch. I used to tell myself I could outrun it. That was before I learned how long a river remembers. I thought the worst of it was that night. The face, the whisper, the river's hunger. I thought running, pleading, pretending would buy me time. Time is a generous lie. It gives you enough to breathe, and then it reminds you what you already owe. I tried every sensible thing a person tries when the floor cracks beneath them. I moved my daughter's photos to the back of the closet. I smeared Vaseline on the bedroom windows like some superstitious fool, as if grease could blur attention. I spent cash I didn't have on a motel by the interstate and convinced myself I'd shake the feeling. For a week, I almost believed it. My hands stopped vibrating. The copper taste faded. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting to exhale. Then one afternoon, on a grocery run, a cashier folded a receipt and her pen light caught the glass of my watch. 2 red dots winked from under the counter. Her smile faltered. She told me, without meaning to, that her nephew drowned in that river when he was 7. They called it an accident. She touched her throat like it still hurt. That's when the ledger made itself clear. The river didn't simply take, it collected. It collected stories, names, dosages of grief. It cataloged attention like currency. And with every glance, every whispered retelling, the balance tipped back toward me. So I went back. Not at night. Stupid, stubbornly practical. At noon, the sun bleaching the water to a flat, indifferent steel. I stood on the same bank, the place where the cattails whispered conspiracy, and I threw my empty rod, no bait, no line, into the current. I didn't need bait. I needed proof. The water closed around the handle like a fist. Not red eyes this time. Something softer, older. A memory of voices, mothers calling, lovers swearing, a child saying one last thing before the surface took him. The river offered me a trade that felt both fair and impossible. Forget in exchange for forgetting. Give up the remembering that kept me awake, and it would unremember my debt. I thought of my wife's thin laugh, of the mailbox where the mortgage notices browned the edges, of my daughter tracing letters on foggy glass. I thought about walking away and letting some stranger step near the bank, letting them see the lights, and maybe hear their name like a caress that turns to a rope. In the end, I bargained in the only currency I had left, my attention. I told the river to take the part of me that wanted to look, to want explanation, to narrate the world into tiny, manageable parts. I kept the rest, the memory of her laugh, the shape of my daughter's chin. The river took with the slow precision of water wearing stone. It took the itch, the compulsion, the frantic need to go back and look. It took my need to warn. I woke the next day ordinary, which is to say dangerous in its own small quiet. I could walk past the bank without my throat closing. I could sleep past 2 a.m. without waking to a wet whisper. But I could also no longer tell anyone with the insistence they'd require. I had traded my tongue for my peace. The town moved on the way towns do, gossip folded into errands, grief into gossip, warnings into jokes. The eyes dimmed for me, but not gone. They clustered now, like a rumor that has found other mouths. Sometimes when the light hits the river just right, I see not my reflection, but a scatter of little red marbles looking back, and a small, terrible relief settles. They won't look at me anymore. That's the change. I stopped fighting what I could not change. I surrendered my story so someone else might carry a different one. I learned the cost of bargaining with a thing that remembers longer than you do. I learned that peace bought with forgetting is peace with strings. So if you ever find yourself near that bend at dusk, hear the river hum, and feel that small, bright compulsion to look, don't. Walk the other way. Let the water keep its debts. Let some other pair of curious eyes fill whatever hole it is you're trying to stitch up. If this story made the hairs on your arm stand up, do me a favor. Like the video to help the channel grow, subscribe for daily content, and share it with someone who loves being scared. There's another video recommended on your screen you'll probably like. Click that next. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll see you back tomorrow. The Bone Pile. I'll be honest with you, I've always been the kind of person who hikes to escape. Work, bills, people. I just disappear into the woods. That weekend was supposed to be the same. Fresh air, a cheap tent, and no cell service. The forest that day was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel like peace. It feels like something waiting. Not the rustle of birds, not even the distant hum of insects. Just a thick, swallowing silence, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. I remember telling myself it was fine, that maybe the weather was shifting, or the animals had moved deeper into the brush. I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. But even as I walked, every crunch of my boots on dead leaves sounded wrong, echoed too long, lingered too much. That's when I stumbled into the clearing. The ground opened up like a wound, a circle where the trees gave way. At first, I thought it was some kind of hunting site. Bones everywhere, pale and splintered, littered across the dirt like driftwood on a beach. Deer, bear, smaller creatures too. And then I saw it, a skull, human, no mistaking it. The jaw still clung to a few teeth, and the eye sockets were black hollows staring up at the gray sky. Behind it, others stacked together in a kind of pyramid, balanced carefully as though someone had arranged them for a purpose. Not random, deliberate. My skin crawled, but my feet stayed rooted. It should have been the moment I turned and walked away fast before my brain caught up with what my eyes were seeing. But I didn't, because here's the truth. I'm curious like that. Always have been. And curiosity is the thin, sharp edge where stories like this always go bad. The second I stepped back, the whole forest seemed to inhale. The silence deepened, pressing into my ears like cotton. My heart hammered, and that's when I heard it. Bones shifting. The pile moved. At first it was subtle, like something burrowing underneath, then sharper. Bones scraping, sliding, clinking together. One skull tumbled down the heap, jaw snapping loose as it struck the dirt, only for another to rise in its place, like invisible hands were hard at work. Piece by piece, the heap became a body, a rib cage arched upright, vertebrae snapping into a crooked spine. Limbs clawed their way into shape, femurs and tibias clicking like clockwork. And above it all, a crown of antlers locked into place, jagged, branching high into the air. The head turned, empty sockets found me. And when the jaw opened, it wasn't a scream, it was a grind, like stone against stone. I bolted. Branches whipped across my face, tearing my skin. My boots caught on roots flies, sent me stumbling, but I didn't stop. The sound behind me was worse than any nightmare. A cascade of rattling, sharp and endless, like an avalanche made of knives. I risked a glance over my shoulder. Bad mistake. It was running too, impossibly fast, its bones clicking into place with every stride, as if it was always meant to be chasing me. I screamed for help, though I knew there was no one to hear. The woods had swallowed every living thing. It was just me and it. Then, water, a narrow stream glimmered through the trees like salvation. I lunged for it, nearly pitching forward on the bank, and threw myself into the current. The shock of the cold punched the air out of my lungs, but I didn't care. The water dragged me, tumbled me, spun me against rocks. I clutched at branches, at anything, just to keep from drowning. Above the roar, I swore I could still hear it. That grinding, rattling sound, running along the bank, pacing me. I prayed to every god I'd never believed in that bones couldn't swim, but the stream forked. And as I was pulled into the darker branch, the water carried something alongside me. A hand, white, skeletal, reaching through the current, closing fast. When I crawled onto the bank, coughing up river water and mud, I told myself I'd escaped. My chest ached with every breath, my skin raw from rocks and branches, but I was alive. And that should have been enough. But it wasn't. Sleep never came that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw it. The way the bones clicked together, the hollow sockets locking on mine. The sound of it running after me, fast as a storm. I knew what I'd seen, and knowing meant I couldn't walk away. So the next morning I came back with help. 3 rangers from the nearby station, men who'd seen bears gut campsites, wolves circle cabins. They carried rifles, radios, flashlights. Solid men. Real. The kind of company you believe in when the world starts to tilt sideways. We cut through the brush, the forest still hushed, still wrong. My skin prickled the closer we came. I swore I could smell it, rot and iron on the air. And then we stepped into the clearing, empty, just leaves, just dirt. No bones, no skulls, no pyramid. The place looked untouched, as if it had never been disturbed. The rangers glanced at each other. One asked, "Why'd you bring us here? What exactly were you hoping we'd find?" His tone had that edge to it, the one people use when they think you're losing your grip. And for a second, even I doubted. Maybe exhaustion, maybe dehydration, maybe the forest itself playing tricks. But then, God help me, one of the rangers knelt and brushed the leaves back. And beneath them, he uncovered a print, Not an animal's, not a man's. It was skeletal. Each toe a clean groove, the earth pressed deep, as though the weight of something impossibly heavy had passed through, and more prints followed, leading away into the trees. The rangers went pale. One lifted his rifle, another cursed under his breath. I should have begged them to leave it alone. I should have run. Instead, I said, we follow, because that's the moment, the point of no return, the place where fear stops mattering and curiosity drives the knife in deeper. And once you choose to follow the bones, you can't ever go back. I tried to put it behind me. God knows I tried. Weeks crawled by, slow and heavy, and I lived them like a man on parole. Quiet, careful, always looking over my shoulder. I didn't talk about it, didn't hike again. When friends asked what I'd been up to, I told them I was just tired, working too much. That was easier than the truth. Sleep became a stranger. On good nights, I drifted for an hour or two with the lights burning in every room. On the bad nights, well, I lay there listening to my own heartbeat, straining against the silence. But silence doesn't stay silent forever. It began with the smallest sounds, a faint tap in the walls, like the old pipes settling, a rattle from the attic, as though a box shifted in the dark. I told myself it was nothing. Houses make noise, but then I started hearing it outside, soft, deliberate, like something pacing beneath the trees, the sound of bones knocking together, clattering, coming closer. I went back to the ranger station once, desperate to hear their version of what happened. But when I asked, all three were gone. Transferred, reassigned, scattered to different corners of the state. No one there even remembered their names. That night I dreamed of the clearing again, except this time, I wasn't standing outside it. I was in the center, and the bone pile rose up around me, circling higher, sealing me inside. I woke gasping, sweat pouring, and for a long minute, I thought I'd never escaped at all. That maybe the stream, the rangers, everything since, was just the dream. And then the noise came again, louder now. The sharp, unmistakable rhythm of something assembling itself, piece by piece, just outside my window. I pressed my back to the wall and clutched the baseball bat I kept by the bed, every nerve in my body screaming to run, to flee, to do something. But here's the cruel truth. You can run from the woods. You can run from rivers, rangers, even your own memories. You can't run from what follows you home. So now I ask myself this question every night before I close my eyes. Did I really escape that clearing? Or did I just carry it with me, like a sickness under the skin? Because the longer I sit with it, the less I believe in escape. I lock my doors, nail shut the attic, salt the windowsills like some desperate old superstition. But it doesn't matter. The sound always finds me. The clatter, the grind, the sharp click of bone against bone. Sometimes it's in the yard, sometimes the basement. Once, I swear, it came from the closet across from my bed. And I've changed. Of course I have. I don't hike anymore. Don't laugh, don't linger in crowds, don't even dare to feel safe. My life has become a waiting room, and I'm the only one who knows what's coming through the door. The worst part? I can't decide what's worse, that the rangers vanished, that no trace of them exists anymore, or that I know, deep down, they didn't vanish at all. They were taken, swallowed into the pile, their bones stripped and stacked, their voices ground into that endless rattle chasing me through the nights. And maybe that's my fate too. Maybe the thing doesn't kill you right away. Maybe it follows, maybe it waits. I wonder if one day someone else will find a clearing in the woods and they'll see not just a pyramid of skulls, but one more, mine, set neatly in place, waiting with its hollow eyes turned skyward. So I'll leave you with this. If you ever hear it, the rattling, the clattering, that sound like a bag of knives spilled across the floor, don't look, don't turn, don't follow, because once you follow the bones, they'll follow you back. If this story left a chill in your spine, don't forget to like this video. It helps more people discover it, and it means the world to the channel. Make sure you subscribe for daily stories just like this, and share this with someone who loves a good scare, or needs one. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and remember, there's another video waiting for you on your screen right now. I'll see you tomorrow, if you can sleep tonight. The Lantern in the Pines. You ever notice how the woods at night are never really quiet? People think they are. They're wrong. The forest hums, breathes, whispers in a language we're not supposed to understand. Most folks tune it out. I never could. I've always had ears too sharp for my own good. Name's Daniel Myers, 34, grocery store clerk. Cardboard life in a cardboard town. I clock in, stack cans, smile at people I don't care about, clock out. Nights are mine, though. That's when I lace up my boots, grab my old canvas pack, and slip into the trails that cut deep into Miller's Woods. Folks in town call me a loner. Maybe I am. But out there among the pines where the world falls dark and the air tastes like damp earth, I feel real. It was late October, cold enough that the breath came out of me in little ghosts. The trail was slick with fallen needles, the moon clawing through the branches overhead. I liked it that way. That hush, that velvet dark pressing in from every angle. But there was something different that night. The woods had a pulse, like it was holding its breath, waiting. Half a mile in, I caught it sharp on the wind. Not the sweet curl of campfire smoke. Not that. This was harsher, metallic, the stink of kerosene. It bit the back of my throat and made my eyes water. And the thing is, there was no reason for it. No campsites nearby, no cabins worth a damn. Just miles of trees, black and endless. I told myself it was nothing, probably some hiker with poor taste in fuel. But as I rounded a bend, I saw it through the trees, a faint glow bobbing low among the trunks. A lantern, old-fashioned, moving slow, steady. And that's when I knew I wasn't alone in Miller's Woods. Not that night, not anymore. There it was, a lantern sitting in the dirt, flame steady against the wind. Old-fashioned, glass warped, metal caked with soot, like something out of another century. I should have left it there, should have turned around, chalked it up to some hunter's gear, some kid's prank. But I didn't. I stepped closer, boots sinking into the soft earth, heart thudding in my ears. And that's when the woods shifted. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. The shadows, they bent wrong. Stretched in directions the moonlight couldn't explain. My own shadow broke apart like smoke, crawling across the ground without me. The pine needles underfoot crunched too loud, louder than my breathing, louder than the wind. Like the ground itself wanted to shout, "Here he is. He's here." That's when I saw it, a figure, tall, thin, standing utterly still between the trunks, as if carved from the dark itself. I couldn't make out its face, if it had one, but I felt the weight of its stare pressing into me. I froze. My body screamed move, but my legs refused. Then instinct kicked in and I bolted, breaking into a blind run. But the forest wasn't the forest anymore. Trails that should have carried me home folded in on themselves. Branches clawed at my jacket. Every turn I took spat me back into the same clearing, the lantern waiting dead center, its flame unwavering. It didn't chase me. That was worse. It waited. The glow of it wasn't warm. It was wrong. It crawled over my skin like frostbite that burned, seeping under my jacket, gnawing at the marrow of my bones. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I touched that light, if I let it touch me, I wouldn't be Daniel Myers anymore. I shouted, angry, desperate, just to hear a human sound. My voice came back strangled, swallowed by the trees. That's when the lantern moved. Not the figure, the lantern. It rose from the dirt, hovered just above the ground, and drifted toward me, steady as a pendulum. The figure followed behind it, each step silent, its head cocked to one side like it was studying me, deciding something. I wanted to run. God, I wanted to. But every direction led me back to that damn glow. And with each breath, I realized the forest wasn't letting me leave. Not until I faced it. I had to choose, leave the lantern burning or touch it. But choice is a tricky word, because the longer I stood there, the less it felt like mine. The lantern's glow tugged at me, not with hands, not with chains, but with something deeper, like a hook buried in the back of my skull. It whispered without speaking. Promises, answers, escape. A way out of the labyrinth of trees that had closed its jaws around me. I reached out. The flame swelled, flaring white-hot, so bright it carved the forest into stark bones of shadow and light. The air crackled. My hand burned without burning, and that figure, the tall, thin one, stepped forward at last. Close enough that I saw its face, or the absence of one. No eyes, no mouth, no features at all. Just hollow dark, deeper than midnight, like staring into the space behind your eyelids when you press too hard. It tilted its head, and in that tilt I understood. The lantern wasn't a beacon, it was a door, and I had opened it. The forest roared, not with sound, God, I wish it had been sound, but with feeling. A pressure that drove into my chest, rattled my teeth, flooded my veins with ice. My knees buckled. The trees bent toward me, their branches writhing, reaching. The figure raised its arm, long and too thin, the joints bending wrong. It pointed to the flame, and I realized I wasn't meant to carry it. I was meant to step through it. I fought it, clawed at myself, screamed against the pull. My body wanted to leap into that light, vanish inside it, dissolve. But another part of me, the raw animal part, shrieked to stay. I made a sound I didn't know I was capable of, a guttural, broken howl, and slammed the lantern shut. The flame snuffed. Darkness slammed down, absolute and suffocating. The figure recoiled, its hollow head twisting back like a snake caught in a trap. The trees groaned, the ground split beneath my feet, and for a moment I thought I'd done it. I'd broken whatever spell had dragged me here. Then the lantern sparked back to life, small but steady. And this time, it was inside me. I woke up miles from Miller's Woods, sprawled in a ditch beside County Road 6. Gravel bit into my cheek, headlights streaked by, and the hiss of tires on wet asphalt reminded me life was still moving out here. The world hadn't stopped, but I had. My boots were caked with mud, my palms tacky with dried sap that stuck no matter how hard I scrubbed. The lantern was gone, the figure too, but my jacket, it reeked. That bitter kerosene stench clung to the fabric, to my skin, to my hair. I burned through 3 bottles of detergent, and it wouldn't leave. Like smoke from a fire you can't put out. People noticed. The cashier at the diner wrinkled her nose when I walked in. My neighbor left a bottle of Febreze on my porch. My boss called me into the office and said, "Dan, you gotta handle that smell. Customers are complaining." I laughed in his face. Couldn't help it. He didn't hear the whispering under it, the faint hiss of flame licking at my thoughts. At night, I dreamed of it. The lantern. The pale white flare, the hollow figure, the forest bending like it wanted to swallow me whole. I'd wake up with the sheets damp, my room cold as if all the heat had drained away. Once, I swore I saw that faint glow through my window, bobbing low in the yard like it had followed me home. And yet, life trudged on. I stocked shelves, paid bills, made small talk. People looked at me and saw the same lonely grocery clerk. They didn't see how my reflection sometimes lagged a second behind in the bathroom mirror. How my shadow, when I walked the store aisles, bent at angles the lights never cast. I told myself I was fine, that it was all just a bad night in the woods. But then I found it, proof, tucked in the bottom of my pack, sticky with sap and dirt. A shard of glass, warped and blackened at the edges, lantern glass. And when I picked it up, my fingers tingled like frostbite. Whatever I had shut away out there in Miller's Woods, it wasn't gone. It was waiting, patient, hungry, and I carried a piece of it now. Here's the part that keeps me up at night. I thought I escaped. Woke up on the roadside, lungs full of air, stars above me, the world still turning. But you don't just walk away from something like that. Not really. Days blurred into weeks, and I told myself I was fine. I laughed at the memory, tried to bury it under routine, shelf stock, morning coffee, rent due. But no matter how deep I shoved it down, the truth clawed its way back up. Because sometimes, when the lights are off, when the house has gone still, I catch it, a flicker, just there in the corner of my eye. A glow too steady to be a car headlight, too soft to be a street lamp, a glow that shouldn't be there at all. And each time I turn to look, it's gone, but the smell remains. That sharp sting of kerosene in the air, curling in my nostrils, bitter on my tongue. It never fades. I've changed. I know it. I feel it. I move through the world like a man carrying someone else's shadow. My laughter feels borrowed. My voice doesn't sound like mine. And when I close my eyes, I don't just see darkness. I see that white flare, brighter than the sun, swallowing everything. People ask me why I don't hike anymore. Why the woods, once my refuge, now make my hands shake just driving past them. I tell them I'm busy, that I grew out of it. But the truth, I'm scared. Not of the trees, not even of the figure. I'm scared because I know the lantern isn't gone. It's waiting, patient as the forest, patient as the dark, waiting for me to come back. Or worse, waiting for you. If you've stayed with me this long, Thank you. If this story gripped you, unsettled you, or made you glance at the shadows a little differently, do me a favor, hit that like button. It helps more than you think, helps this channel grow, helps the story spread. Subscribe for daily chills and share this with someone you think could use a late night shiver. There's another story waiting for you on the screen right now. Click it, step inside, and I'll see you back here tomorrow, unless the lantern finds you first. Tracks in the snow. You ever notice how silence in winter isn't peaceful? It's too quiet? That was me. Just a regular guy, chasing some solitude on a weekend camping trip. Thought I'd clear my head, breathe that sharp pine air, and maybe prove I wasn't as restless as I felt back in town. Out there in the northern woods, the trees stood black and thin against a sky that looked more like steel than heaven, and the snow laid itself down in heavy drifts, swallowing sound whole. My boots crunched, my breath smoked, and for a while, it felt like I was the last person left on earth. I had my tent pitched near the tree line, a little fire licking low in the ring of stones I'd built. Nothing fancy, just me, my gear, and the endless hush. The kind of hush that doesn't calm you so much as remind you how small you are. But here's the thing, sometimes when you go looking for quiet, it's not peace you find. It's something listening back. It began subtle. Just a prickle under the skin, a sense that the shadows at the tree line weren't as empty as they should have been. Every now and then I'd swear I heard something move, a shuffle, faint like a foot dragging over snow, then nothing. The kind of sound you tell yourself belongs to the wind or an animal, except it wasn't. The first sign? Tracks, not animal tracks, boot prints, my size, my tread, own long. The stride was too long, and they didn't lead away, they circled. Round and round my tent in the night. That's when I stopped feeling alone. That's when I realized I hadn't come out here to escape the noise of people. No, I'd walked right into the company of something else. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I'd walked half asleep. Maybe I dreamed it. That excuse works once, maybe twice, but then it starts to feel like complicity. So the second night I didn't sleep. Knife between my knees, headlamp off, listening like a man who's learned his ears can lie awake when his eyes can't. The tent breathed with me. The fire was a dying cough. Everything else was a white noise so complete it made the smallest sound scream. And then I heard it. Not a crack or a twig. Not an animal's careless step. A slow, careful shove right at the nylon wall. Close enough that the fabric whispered when something shifted its weight. Patient. Waiting. Like a thing that knows it can outlast you. At dawn, I unzipped the flap with hands that trembled the way someone's hand does when they're trying not to wake someone they've already killed. The world outside was the same. Trees bowed under snow, the sky awash steel, but the ground around my tent told another story. Boot prints. My boots. Around and around, perfectly spaced, a circular track that made a mockery of straight lines and reason. No inward path, no outward trail, just the loop like a noose laid flat. I checked my boots anyway. Snow packed into the treads, wet and new. I did not remember leaving the tent. I did not remember walking in that rhythm. But my soles told the truth, and the truth was a cold, small thing that sat in my mouth like a stone. I tried logic. I paced. I counted. I told myself I'd been drunk, that I'd sleepwalked into the snow, that my brain had stitched its own lie to cover for a bad night. Each rationalization felt thinner than the last. Then the radio died. Static at first, then a flat, merciless silence. No matter how I turned the dial, the world on the other end of that little box was gone. No town, no ranger station, no comforting hum of someone else awake out there. For a long time, I pressed the radio to my ear and listened to nothing until my hearing ached. The third night, the circles were closer. They stopped at the food canister, as if to sniff, as if to take stock. They stopped at my sleeping bag and hesitated, not touching it, but knowing where it was. The air felt watched, every breath measured by some patient judge. I slept then for a while, if you could call it that, an uneasy doze with one dream layered over another. Me walking. Me watching, me waking with someone else's footprints. I woke with snow in my hair and a taste of iron on my tongue. The stakes shifted from curiosity to survival. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't local teenagers. The woods had learned my rhythm, and it was rehearsing it without me. Each circle tightened the problem. Who was the owner of those prints, and how long before it tried to leave the circle for good? thin nylon walls like water against glass. But fatigue is a predator. It doesn't stalk, it waits. It crouches in the corners of your skull until you blink too long, until your body forgets the promise your mind made. And I blinked. God help me, I blinked. That's when it came. The sound was almost gentle, the faint, deliberate tug of a zipper being coaxed open. Not fast, not frantic, careful as if whoever or whatever was outside didn't want to tear the fabric, just peel it back. I snapped awake with a jolt, knife raised, blood roaring in my ears. But the thing I saw froze me colder than the snow. It was my hand. Pale, bloodless, reaching down from above me, working the zipper with careful patience. My hand, but wrong. The nails too clean, the fingers too long, moving without me. And then the face leaned in, my face, grinning with my own crooked teeth, but stretched wider, sharper, until the smile looked carved into the skin. The eyes, God, the eyes weren't mine. They were empty, like glass polished from the inside, reflecting back nothing. I lunged with the knife, but the thing was faster, stronger. It caught my wrist mid-swing, grip icy, inhuman. And still smiling, it leaned close enough that I smelled the cold on its breath. You walk in circles, it whispered, my own voice. Perfect mimicry. You've been practicing. The knife shook in my grip. My arm felt like it didn't belong to me anymore, as though it was already halfway claimed. I had a choice, to fight, to drive the blade through that grin, even if it meant slicing myself open, or to let go, let it take what it wanted. There was no middle ground, no reasoning with the thing that wore my skin like a mask. So I didn't. I screamed, and I drove the knife into the target left, myself. The knife slid in like a bad dream, quick and hot, and for a second I didn't know if I'd hit me or both. Pain flared, white and sharp, then dulled into something hollow, something echoing. The thing wearing my smile staggered back. For the first time, its grin faltered. The edges of its face rippled like a reflection in water when you toss a stone. I clutched my side, warm blood soaking into the cold nylon floor, but I kept my eyes on it. It watched me, head tilted, expression almost curious. Then it laughed, my laugh, a sound I'd never hated until I heard it thrown back at me like a cruel joke. The circles outside crunched under its boots, my boots, as it retreated into the trees. The sound faded fast, swallowed by the winter hush. And then I was alone again. Alone, except for the pain and the faint smell of iron leaking into the snow. I pressed a rag against the wound and sat there until dawn painted the trees a weak gray. No birds, no animals, just the proof of what I'd seen. New tracks, messy and staggering, leading away from the tent. Not circles this time. A path, a direction, mine. The radio, dead as ever, hissed in the corner. I tried it anyway, half hoping my blood had fixed it, like some morbid payment. Nothing. Just silence. I should have packed up, should have stumbled back toward the trailhead, left the woods bleeding behind me. But when I stepped outside, I froze. The path didn't lead away in a straight line. It wandered, weaving between trees, doubling back on itself, like someone learning to walk. Every turn of the prints looked more confident, more sure-footed, as if the thing had finally gotten the hang of my body, as if stabbing myself had only set it free to practice without me. The wound throbbed, the forest loomed, and I realized the worst part. I wasn't certain anymore which footprints were mine and which belonged to it. The line between us had blurred in blood and snow, and there was no sewing it shut. Somewhere out there, my double was still walking, and with every step, it was getting better at being me. Resolution, I left the tent standing, left the fire ring cold, the blood-stained rags, the knife still sticky where it had fallen. There are some messes you don't clean up because you know you're not coming back. Every step away from that camp was a negotiation. My boots sank deep in the snow, and each print I left behind felt like an invitation, like I was showing it the way. I stopped more than once, staring at the tracks behind me, waiting for them to twitch, to shift, to break free and start walking on their own. They didn't. Not yet. The forest was endless, miles of skeletal trees bent beneath snow that seemed to grow heavier with each hour. The trail markers I trusted on the way in were buried, lost under drifts. I walked anyway, bleeding through my coat, feeling lighter with every drop that soaked into the snow. Lightheaded, weak, but too afraid to stop, because stopping meant sleep. And sleep meant giving it another chance. I don't know how long I walked, hours, days, a whole lifetime compressed into the crunch of boots and the rasp of frozen breath. But when I broke through the tree line, I saw the faint scar of a road, black against the white. Civilization, the promise of people. Relief hit me so hard I almost laughed. Almost. Because that's when I noticed it. More tracks, fresh ones pressed into the powder along the road. My tread, my size, walking parallel to me as if we'd arrived at the edge of the world together. I stood there, swaying, my wound pulsing with every heartbeat, staring at those twin sets of footprints. They didn't waver, didn't stumble like mine. They were steady, strong, like a man who knew exactly where he was going. A truck's engine growled in the distance, a rumble rolling down the frozen road. Headlights flared, bright and blinding. Salvation, maybe. I raised a hand, ready to wave it down. But then I froze. Because out of the tree line, just at the edge of the beams, something else raised its hand too. My hand. Perfect, confident, unwounded. And it smiled. So if you ever hear about a man found wandering the back roads in pale and bleeding, babbling about circles in the snow, don't stop for him. Because maybe it's not him. Maybe it's me. Or worse, maybe it's the thing that finally learned how to walk in a straight line.